Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu continues to defy domestic and international pressure to sign a ceasefire deal with Hamas in Gaza. There have been mass protests in Israel triggered by the recovery of 6 captives found dead in Gaza on Saturday. Netanyahu has asked for forgiveness but insists the war will continue. Heidi Castro reports.
Thousands of Israelis took to the street for a second day, pushing past police lines and converging near the home of Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu in Jerusalem, many blaming his delay in signing a ceasefire deal for the discovery of 6 more dead captives in Gaza.
The government of Israel is a threat to the world peace.
For the first time since mass protests and a labor strike broke out following Saturday's news of the dead captives, Netanyahu addressed the country.
I told the families, and I will say it again tonight, I apologize and ask for your forgiveness because we couldn't bring them back alive. We were close, but we failed. Let me say this again tonight. Israel will not remain silent on this massacre. Hamas will pay the price, a very high price.
Protesters say Netanyahu is prioritizing military gain over the return of captives, pointing to his continued insistence that Israel maintain control of the Philadelphia corridor as part of a ceasefire deal. That's a non-starter for Hamas and a reason U.S.-led negotiations have been stalled for weeks. U.S. President Joe Biden said he was close to presenting a final proposal, but that the Israeli Prime Minister hasn't been doing enough to move the deal forward.
Mr. President, do you think it's time for Prime Minister Netanyahu to do more on this issue? Do you think he's doing enough?
No.
According to the Israeli Health Ministry, the 6 captives found over the weekend were shot at close range, 1 or 2 days before their bodies were discovered. A Hamas military spokesman says Netanyahu's delay in signing a ceasefire and prisoner exchange deal made him responsible for the deaths, and that the Israeli Prime Minister's insistence on freeing the captives using military pressure would mean more returning home in coffins. As 23-year-old Israeli-American Hirsch Goldberg Poland was buried in Jerusalem, the aunt of another young Israeli taken captive in Gaza said she feared for him the same fate.
We were crying the whole morning because it was like, it's so frightening, the feeling that in 1 minute things can change and people can die, and we hope that he's really alive and we can save him.
Israel believes 101 captives remain in Gaza, including 35 who are thought to be dead. Heidi Castro, Al Jazeera.
Okay, we'll now speak to Ilan Baruch, who's the chairperson of Policy Working Group. That's an Israeli advocacy team focusing on policy issues based on the 2-state paradigm. He formerly served as Israel's ambassador to South Africa. Welcome back to Al Jazeera, sir. So during the press briefing that Netanyahu gave just about less than 24 hours ago, he argued for what he said was the strategic imperative to keep Israeli troops stationed along the Philadelphia corridor in Gaza. What does this tell you about Netanyahu's plans for Gaza?
Well, the horrific events on October 7 last year are a watershed for us Israelis, for the Netanyahu government, for the Palestinians, and for the region at large. And nothing that took place before is relevant anymore for the future. Netanyahu, beyond his position as Prime Minister of Israel, he is also a strategist of the right wing, and his coalition, extreme right-wing partners that are actually applying pressure on him and putting the partnership in his coalition at stake. And they believe that Israel is entitled and indeed should, for its security, maintain control over the entire territory between the River Jordan and the coastline of the Mediterranean. Now, departing from Philadelphia corridor was argued and disputed already in 2005 when Israel left the territory in the context of the disengagement when Sharon was prime minister. And it was always a question if in Israel, in the Israeli discourse, if we should have left the Gaza Strip
Right.
or not.
And if you combine that with what's happening right now in the occupied West Bank, I mean, our reporter was reporting of all the raids and obviously the arrests and the killings that have been going on. We heard from the Israeli foreign minister last week who said that we need to address what he called the threat in the occupied West Bank the same way as we deal with Gaza, including the temporary evacuation of civilians. I mean, what is the ultimate objective here then?
The future of the West Bank and the Israeli presence in it depends on who controls the Jordan Valley. If Israel is pushed by the international community to leave the Jordan Valley, the right wing in Israel believes Israel then becomes critically vulnerable to attacks from the east through Jordan. And insisting on Philadelphia is actually preparing the foreground for a battle of Israel to maintain control indefinitely of the Jordan Valley. And I want to remind you and the listeners, the International Court of Justice was requested by the General Assembly to advise on the legality of the occupation. And in a large majority of judges, it concluded that it is not legitimate because of the time factor, because it is indefinite. And Netanyahu and his government, they want to prove that presence of Israel in the occupied territories is a legitimate necessity for the defense of Israel. And the Philadelphia corridor provides Israel with an opportunity to argue for this case.
So if that is the ultimate aim then, and Netanyahu is planning on staying in the Philadelphia corridor, I mean, Hamas said, look, this is a non-starter for us. Where does this all leave then any potential for a ceasefire solution? At the same time, we heard from the U.S. President Joe Biden, who said that we're close. He said the U.S. is, in fact, very close to presenting a ceasefire proposal. I mean, what does this all mean?
Yes. Netanyahu finds himself attacked in a pincer movement, so to speak, between the Israeli public who wants to see the hostages freed alive and the Americans who are saying, no, you have not done enough. And Netanyahu realizes that with all the patience the Americans are manifesting, and I can tell you that the people on my side are very impatient and frustrated with the American administration. The American administration should have pushed Israel into action a long time ago, way before we were moving into Rafah and the Philadelphia corridor. But now the situation is that the Americans are showing a level of impatience with Israel in their polite language, while the demonstrators are intensifying. And I can tell you from firsthand, because I am there every evening, and it is a very strong message that is being sent from the public at large in Israel on that. But I want to tell you that we, in our policy working group, for the last decade, we told the international community, our interlocutors, listen, the situation is not going to stay for long. Mm-hmm. It will change between Israel and Palestine. It will change either by force, by violence, or by international pressure. For years and years and years, the international community, the Americans included, sat on the fence, on the sidelines, and waited for the two parties to sort out the issues. And I think it is high time now that the international community will move in, and Qatar is a player here,
Right.
and create a process by which our conflict is relaunched into a peace process with a settlement at the end of it.
Okay, Ilan Baruch, thank you so much for speaking to us from West Jerusalem.
Thank you.
Make sure to subscribe to our channel to get the latest news from Al Jazeera.